Hello everybody, welcome to the videos. Today we're going to be talking about buying or selling players and prospects from the Senior Bowl. The 2024 Senior Bowl was fun and everything like that, but we are a little bit further removed from it, so I'm curious if this video even does well. I highly doubt it will, but we're going to do it anyways. We got a lot of buys and sells from both offense and defense. Got a lot to go over here. Let me know how you guys feel about some of these. Some of these are a little bit questionable and controversial, so let's hop right into it with, we actually have two quarterbacks, but we'll start with the first one. I'm buying Bo Nix, who only measured in at 6'1", under 220 pounds. He's got decently sized hands. Actually, yeah, pretty good sized hands. He was number 10 on the national team. But yeah, day one was a bit spotty for Nix and rebounded nicely. Day 2 and 3, he was one of my favorite players in this class. And I think he's a bit underrated and not placed well by the consensus. I'm usually a bit higher on some of the guys that I really like, and I am same case here with Bo Nix. He was a standout for me, especially on day 3, where he looked like he might have found a rhythm, or still was like kind of was less reserved on day 3 than he was on the first 2. Take that with a grain of salt because we don't know, it's speculation, but he still had some nice throws while he wasn't finding a rhythm and wasn't really looking like himself. So Bo Nix, the time at the Senior Bowl for him was a little bit tense, maybe a little bit stressful, kind of held him up in a shell a little bit, if you will, and he held it reserved, but he still made some plays and then found his flow later and got more comfortable as the week went on. So Bo Nix for me is a huge buy, and again, I really like the tape. To me, he is just like a full like buy in this situation, as I just don't agree with consensus at all. So I'm just buying Bo Nix right now. Like, this is like stock up and down, you know, like, would you buy Bo Nix right now so in the future you think he's better than how he's placed right now? It's kind of what these are based off, by the way. I didn't clarify that. And I'm selling Spencer Rattler. People are mad at me right now, but he is only 6 feet tall and another guy with decent sized hands. Like, he's good, but he was number 2 on the American team. He had a lot of praise heading into heading in Spencer's direction from the media right now. Still has some questions about his processing and decision making at times, especially when the game's on the line. Rattler wasn't great through his college career when trying to close out a closer game. He had a few great throws and he really stood out in the game, but also had some dots in practice when he was feeling good, and more importantly, when he had time to. So with time, there's no doubt Spencer Rattler has the arm talent. He's got the hype behind him. I think he even had a Netflix series about him. So interesting story, obviously. High praise, like I mentioned, as a kid, and it's hard being and having that much pressure to be that good as a kid. And I think he's done a good job at South Carolina. I think he's still good, but some people are even having second round grades on him, and I just don't agree with that. So Spencer Rattler for me right now is a total sell. I'm sorry, but like I said, like, these get controversial, and this one got controversial really quick with Spencer Rattler. But I'm selling. I'm like, I would say I'm sorry, I'm not. Like, this is just genuinely just how I feel about some of these guys, and I don't think Spencer Rattler is, I think his stock is way too high right now. Therefore, I'd sell it and get out while I can, because that's what this video is all about here. Moving on over to running backs now, where I'm selling Dejon Edwards or Dejon. I'm not sure the exact pronunciation of that, but this guy is as shifty as ever, still displayed his wow ability, and something that really stands out with his play style is his elusiveness and how fast he executes his moves. Something that stood out on tape with him also ended up translating to the Senior Bowl was his lack of power, where he doesn't work through any contact whatsoever. Edwards can be going 20 miles an hour and still be stopped by one safety over top that stood in his way if he gets a good angle. But Dejon's game is making people, or Dejon's game is making people miss, and a great receiver out of the backfield. He runs really great routes. These things set Edwards up to have an amazing Senior Bowl because of the lack of physicality at the Senior Bowls or at the Senior Bowl, and all of the open space that's presented through the week of practice. So I really expected Dejon Edwards to have an amazing Senior Bowl where he would make everyone look silly, because there was no power, physicality, or tackling that would hold him back through the week of practices. So I was really expecting him to come out here, and he didn't even have an eye-opening Senior Bowl. Maybe for some people that were really paying attention, they really liked what they saw, but for me, Dejon Edwards wasn't exactly a standout. It's a sell for me right now. I'm getting out because I really think that this is the way that the NFL is headed with these shorter or smaller, quicker backs, but I don't think Dejon has the long speed of like a Keaton Mitchell, and and he's got great elusiveness. He's a great receiver out of the backfield, not taking away from him, but people are going to see him a lot higher than I do just because he can roll with no momentum. He has such a lack of power. There is no effort. I guess there's a lot of effort in his game, but there isn't a whole lot of power or like push in his game, I should say, where once he meets contact, he turns his legs. Like, no, he literally doesn't go anywhere. He gets stuck right the second someone even gets an arm on him. So Dejon Edwards is a sell for me, as his stock might be at an all-time high right now, but we'll see once running back shows and the experts really start breaking down the running backs of this class. We'll see what they think about him. We'll move on to another running back real quick, and a running back buy for me ends up being Missouri's Cody Sherer, who is actually at a great size, 5'8". You'd like him to be around 5'10", probably be the prototypical or great size, ideal size for your running back, near 220 pounds. Now he's got a little shorter arms, which is fine, but he's shifty. He was really nice in the pass game. It looked like he was pretty fluid there. In my opinion, he's got some great upside and had some amazing production in the SEC through the college year. Sherer wasn't a mainstream guy or someone everyone was looking forward to watching, but he made himself into one of those guys and gave people a reason to talk about him. Cody came in as an underdog and was actually a walk-on to start his career, so he's used to proving himself and showing people what he could do. What Cody could do was actually really fun to watch. He runs with some anger while staying lower to the ground with his nearly 5'8", 220-pound frame. Cody Sherer, to me, seems like a guy that is like you're one of your typical 4th or 5th rounders that can develop into a role player on a team, but I think he's actually already there. I think he's a 4th, 5th rounder, like I said, but I think he's already a guy. I don't think he has to develop or has to learn one or two little things before you feel okay putting him into your lineup. Pretty good already, and already actually a pretty good pass catcher from what we saw at the Senior Bowl. I haven't watched his college tape, so we'll have to obviously dive into that, but I'm not doing rechecks here for a while. Our first wide receiver by Malachi Corley, who's like a running back, but he's got a strong center of gravity that characterizes him like one, but he's actually a very good pass catcher. He's listed at receiver, and he would obviously play receiver. He's a great pass catcher and offers a lot after the catch. Corley displayed some good athleticism in receiver play at the Senior Bowl after primarily being a screen target or a guy that only catches the ball within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. In college at Western Kentucky, and the scheme he was in there, he said kind of limited what he could do, and he was excited to show people what he can do and what the upside is there. And Corley has all the upside in the world and has some great qualities to be a role player in the NFL offense or in an NFL offense right away. Makes him such a buy for me, with people not even talking about him in the 2nd round, people saying it's like a fringe 3rd round guy, which is kind of crazy to me. But I think, like I said, I think he has a role right away in an NFL offense. I don't think he's quite the Deebo Samuel type runner, but he was so good and looked quite athletic. He has that strong center of gravity, like I said, and he's got some power to him. He keeps his body pretty balanced through contact and just looks like he's ready to contribute. He's got the right mentality, and I think he actually showed a bit more of the receiver play we were looking for instead of just being a yards after catch guy. He showed some of the nuance and the tools of receiver play. And another receiver I'm buying is South Carolina's Xavier Legette, who weighed in. That was kind of disappointing at his size when people wanted the 6'3", 230-pound monster freak of nature, and Xavier Legette was still a guy people believed that he had the great size over the season. And for me, nothing changes with him weighing in at only 6'1" when people were saying, yeah, but he's only 6'1" now that we know like that. There was like people saying, yeah, this guy's a monster. He's so big and he can do so much. It's like, okay, yeah, that is the case still. He's still so big at 223, 6'1". Nothing, like I said, changes for me and still presents major upside along with some of the stuff he displayed at the Senior Bowl, like his catch radius, hands, and ability to get vertical and play physical. Xavier has a great story too. Legette was a special teamer for South Carolina all the way till his last season. After he impressed through camp and the offseason, Legette went on to start for the Gamecocks, and in his first game, he went for 178 yards, and the rest is history through his senior year, I believe. So Xavier Legette was definitely a guy that he's one to watch. I really like him, and people have him like falling to the 3rd round. So definitely one to watch. And a wide receiver sell for me ends up being Jamari Thrash, who measured in just under 6 foot at 5'11", 185. He's got some smaller hands with him as well. But he had his moments at the Senior Bowl, but Thrash, not Trash. I literally have written down Trash instead of Thrash. Thrash was also a little slower than I thought he'd be. Thrash, again, it says Trash in my notes here, but Thrash also had a few reps where he was dancing a lot and just lacking a little bit of the nuance or common habits of playing receiver. There were multiple reps where he just couldn't get his hands up quick enough to make the catch. Late hands are good, but the hands that are too late aren't that great, and it's a little frustrating. But yeah, I think he had like 2 reps on day 2 or 3 where he is, you know, he's getting the ball up and then the ball's like just here, then he starts to raise his hands and then just misses it, or it's right over his hands. So maybe a little bit of lack of coordination there. And like I said, there was a few reps where he just dances a lot and tries to figure out a way pass, maybe doesn't, maybe hesitates more than you need to, doesn't really have the urgency there as well. So he might struggle at the next level. There might be a learning curve, but I wouldn't be surprised if he still comes out and is a good player in the NFL. I'm not as high on him as I've seen other people. So Jamari Thrash for me ends up being a sell. Now, I think this is the best buy of them all. Devontae Walker at 6'1", 197, great size in my opinion. I would say pretty average hand size, if not just a little bit bigger, but he was number 14 on the national team, but he had his issues catching the ball. Day 2, he might have actually had 5 drops, like straight up drops, just 5 of them. Hits the hands and falls right out of them, but I really liked his tape. His hands weren't so bad there, and I'd rely on the athleticism with the smooth breaks. Walker plays with, he's a smooth criminal. How about that? And I think that'll translate to the NFL. And I believe he's a good receiver with good hands that'll play well at the NFL level. All that aside, I think Tez Walker is probably the best buy of them all, and I'm going to rely what I saw on tape from him instead of what like he might just be a nervous dude that takes a little bit to adjust to new atmospheres, if you will. So Tez Walker, one hell of a buy in my opinion. And the next guy we'll talk about, another one hell of a buy. Johnny Wilson of Florida State University weighed in at 6'6", and 237 pounds. He's got some crazy long arms as well, but yes, Johnny might look like a deer at times. I'm not gonna lie, he looks like a damn deer when, like, literally the animal, when they kind of like prance around and whatever. His legs are long. He's really like weird. It's so different to watch him compared to everybody else. He's got quite the unique size at 6'6", 240, and I think he's even hit like 20 miles an hour in college before. But he shows the ability to catch the ball when and make it look at least somewhat natural in the process. Johnny is a 6'6" mismatch with all the alien-like traits that I like to believe are being crazy undervalued right now. I don't think I've heard any hype, if at all. I don't hear Johnny Wilson hype at all. Wilson is an amazing blocker, great athlete, and a huge body. In case you haven't noticed, massive upside here. And I love the tape. Didn't mind what I saw at the Senior Bowl. I'm a Johnny Wilson believer any day of the week. Give me Johnny Wilson as a buy, like 1000%. He just is a guy that might struggle to catch the ball. You might struggle to find a place to put him on your offense or where to call him, either a tight end or a wide receiver, slot receiver. Like those, I'm very not concerned about that. I'm very not. And in Johnny Wilson, huge buy for me with the lack of, I guess, good thought and good words around on Johnny Wilson that teams seem to have right now. There's not a whole lot of buzz going on about Johnny Wilson, or I think there should be a lot more. Now, Jaire Bell is a sell for me at 6'1", 244. Now, that weigh-in really hurts his stock. It also hurt his opinion in general, and with his stock being so incredibly low, I'm gonna sell him. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm gonna have to sell him, even though it's a very low sell. But Jaire had some very nice reps and was fairly consistent through his week at the Senior Bowl. Doesn't counter the fact he's a tight end listed at 6'1" and under 250 pounds. He still has the great movement skills and very unique skill set that very few have, but Jaire headed to the NFL might be preferred or seen more as an H-back that has limited usage like Juszczyk or the Patrick Ricards of the world, where there are good football players, just minimize roles. I don't think that he'd really get the full, I don't know. People still think he could be like an inline tight end that is featured through an offense, but I'm more banking on the thought that he'd play H-back and more of a fullback type of role like Juszczyk, with like a utility guy instead of being a focal point in offense like he was at Florida State, where he was schemed up in all different type of ways and in all different type of roles for him there. So I just don't see him getting the same usage or looks in the NFL, and people still think he might. I'm selling him. Sorry, Jaheim. I actually really liked the tape. I thought there was some major upside there. Thought he was a receiver playing tight end that just lacked athleticism, was a little bit bigger and more clunky, and obviously 244 pounds is power to be reckoned with, but I just don't really see it. So like I said, sorry bud, but Jaheim Bell is going to be a sell for me, and we'll move on to one of the, or I guess the only offensive lineman in this video. I'm buying Patrick Paul, who stands at 6'7", 333 pounds, has gone from a fringe first rounder to start the year in the draft process to a guy that might be a middle of the second round type pick. Paul was solid at the Senior Bowl, but more importantly, he looked massive, he looked nasty, and NFL likes these guys that have some of these traits, plus the improvement that Paul showed over this last year compared to the player he was last year. Okay, so I should say Paul showed over this year was totally different to the player he was last year. He showed that he's more than capable of improvement. And like I've mentioned, he's got the NFL traits. He's got power, size, competitive demeanor, and improvement through, I guess, his college career. So Patrick Paul, definitely a buy for me. I don't get where the hype lacks on this guy. Obviously, I get that the media he doesn't get talked about. I understand that part of it, but Patrick Paul he's got everything in my opinion, and maybe just was a little bit more inconsistent than everybody else. But if we're talking about drafting on traits, Patrick Paul to me is more than okay. I'm taking him like early second round, honestly. I'm buying the stock is what I'm trying to say, but I'm selling Kansas's edge rusher Austin Booker. Showed off his deep arsenal through his week at the Senior Bowl and had a lot of really nice reps. Doesn't change the fact he didn't weigh in, mostly because he looks around 240 pounds like max. I didn't like what I saw physically. He was good, but he just had a few reps where he was manhandled or just straight up jammed where he stood. Booker might have the tools, and I can honestly see him being a good NFL player at some point. I just think that there's a higher chance that he's a guy drafted off traits as a developmental guy that never ends up coming to fruition or working out. A guy like Peyton Turner kind of jumps to mind here, but he might have even been a little heavier here than Booker and more physically imposing. Booker really struggled to find his feet day one in the Senior Bowl, and that kind of popped out to me. And Booker, it might just be the same curve at the NFL where he has a lot of work to put in, and he might even lose confidence by year two if he's getting 20% of the reps and doesn't even see a pressure in year one. So Booker, definitely a guy to keep an eye on, and like I said, I can honestly see him being a good NFL player. I just think there's a higher chance that he's a guy drafted off traits a little bit higher than he should. He gets on that super high, and he just never ends up working out, and I can see that happening. So unfortunately for Kansas, Austin Booker, I think another year of college would have really helped him. I think he's coming out as a sophomore or redshirt sophomore or something. So unfortunate here for Booker to be a sell after I kind of liked him at the Senior Bowl, but I'm going to have to sell him. I think he's getting talked about right now as too high of a guy, and I just don't see him on the same level, so I'm selling Austin Booker. You guys want to fight me on it, go to the comments. And I am buying Duke's Dwayne Carter, who might only sit at 6'2". Okay, cool. 6'2.5" almost, but whatever. But he is 308 pounds. I expected him to be around 290, and he looks like a very healthy 308 or 310 or whatever, and he doesn't have the longest of arms, but honestly, I get past that. But he consistently turned his speed and quickness into his power that could work in his hands. He could always shoot past the guy. He showed great twitch and just got around the guy standing in front of him in those one-on-one drills. And he also stood out a few times in the team reps from the interior as well, where those guys weren't really showed off as much, or where they really didn't pop. You didn't see like interior guys like Devondre Sweat get the hype through the team drills. But one guy that actually stood out to me ended up being Dwayne Carter. I thought he was very good and consistently winning. I don't think that everyone is near high enough on him and his Senior Bowl performance. I'd like to see him get a little bit more praise than he did. But yeah, he very consistently won. And he's, like I said, he stood out the few times in the team reps from the interior, which was something that wasn't a common occurrence for everybody else at the Senior Bowl. Dwayne Carter, for me, from the Senior Bowl and what I saw there, I'm really hyped about him. I have to go back and watch some more tape on him. But Dwayne Carter, I like the quickness he plays with, the urgency, the strength, I guess the twitch. Honestly, at 308, I don't think I think he moves almost close to as good as Braden Fisk, who is about 10 pounds lighter and probably a little bit quicker and a better athlete, to be honest, but Dwayne Carter seems like he's not too far off of that level of, at least athletic praise when you're talking about a guy that can get off the line. Craziest sell yet is pass rusher Adisa Isaac out of Penn State. Did actually come in at 6'4", 250, proving true size, but if I had to sell any of these good Senior Bowl edge rushers, I'd sell Adisa. As bad as it sounds, I just thought he'd pop more, especially with his athleticism and polished play style, but he was a bit more quiet and really didn't have the week I wanted him to have. He still had his good impressive reps. They were just few and far between. One thing I liked about Adisa was the fact that he stood out way more in the team drills and the one-on-ones, where it was simulating more of a game environment instead of just outdoing the tackle in front of you. So Adisa Isaac had a really good week when it comes to the team stuff, but really didn't pop one-on-one, which is where he'd most likely be isolated with his athleticism. I think people would really like to play him out wide. I think NFL teams would rave about that. And at this point, I'm not saying, oh, he can't play that way, but I'm saying in a team environment, I think he translates a little bit better when there's less focus on just him being stopped. So Adisa Isaac, I'm sorry, dude. I honestly, this is the hardest sell, but I had to sell one of these edge rushers, and if I had to sell any of them, it was going to be Adisa Isaac out of the bigger names that came to the Senior Bowl. And now we'll get to the last two, which are both DBs. I am buying Notre Dame's Cam Hart, the cornerback that weighed in at 6'2", 204, some of the best size in this draft. Hart displayed some good composure and instincts at the Senior Bowl. He was jumping routes and had some good recoveries after looking iffy to start the rep. I really liked the athleticism and experience he played with, and he really stepped up and covered some of the better guys on the national team and did a really good job in my opinion. Definitely a standout. Now he's going to be rated higher by the draft community after the Senior Bowl, but I'd still buy Cam Hart in a heartbeat. No pun intended, but that is literally the exact note I have written down here, and Cam Hart is every little bit of it. Honestly, I love Cam Hart. I don't understand where the kind of the train fell off the tracks, if you will, with him. I thought that he'd get more by at least the end of the season after reading his player profile and looking at him a little bit, and then people just weren't really high on him, so I was really excited to hear his name was brought up at the Senior Bowl. I thought he'd even have to be like an East-West Shrine Bowl type of guy, but no, Cam Hart actually ended up coming in and really impressed, and like I said, I'd buy Cam Hart in a heartbeat, and that time I did want the pun in there. So yeah, Cam Hart, by the way, it's a definitely buy. Definitely and definite buy, as I tried to mix those two words and didn't really work out. And the last player on this list is a sell, but it is Washington State's Sha Smith Wade. I don't know if it's Chow or Shaw, but I've heard Shaw more than Chow. So I'm going with Sha Smith Wade, coming in at 5'10" and 187. He's a little bit smaller and on that smaller side, and would most likely be seen as a slot player in the NFL. I don't really like that because of I don't like him, and that because of his overly aggressive play style that could draw a lot of flags, where he had so many at the Senior Bowl already. It was, I think, day two, it was, I think, like one hold, next rep he held, and then made a good interception, but doesn't take away from the hold. That was still on the same play. Came back out, had a really nice rep, and then went out the next rep and held. So he flashed, obviously, but Shaw would either be a good overpower, or would be either overpowered in the slot or draw penalties left and right. Now he's got the physicality to play outside. I just don't know how putting him on an island is a good idea, with the likelihood he either draws a flag or his size, he's a little smaller in today's NFL in terms of like boundary corner, where he gets mossed over the top. So either way, Sha Smith Wade for me, not a buy, or yeah, definitely not a buy, and definitely a sell. Selling all my stock right now in Sha Smith Wade, or Shaw. And yeah, he flashed, like I said, at the Senior Bowl. I just don't think that it really works in the NFL with a guy like him. Now, I can definitely be proven wrong, and half this list is probably going to be wrong, but I'm saving it for next year to react to it, or at least keep notes in case I'm like 100% hit rate on this and I end up hitting on all these guys. So yeah, that was my list. That's my buy or sell from the Senior Bowls, that's my buy and sells from the Senior Bowl from 2024. And I'll try to work on my speech, because it's not great, but it's hard kind of like reading over a note, I'm not gonna lie. Something I'm obviously struggling with, not reading, but I just try to talk fast. I try to read fast when I have thoughts going through my head. I'm trying to read ahead as well while I'm trying to reiterate something about the player. Like, it's just not a good idea. I have to find a new way to do this, because this was very not, like, it didn't flow. So that'll be it for me. Thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed, go ahead and like, go down, subscribe, go check the past content on the channel. It would help out a lot. And subscribe once again if you watch this far into the the video, it means a lot, and you'd like my content, obviously. So see you guys next time. Deuces.